My name is Ngozi Fulani. I am the founder of Sistah Space. Sistah Space is a charity that supports African and Caribbean heritage women and girls affected by domestic and sexual abuse. I thought we would make a change. I thought it would take about a year. I'm 7 years in. And the longer we go, the more we find that there is to do.
Violence against black women is very rarely reported, but Ngozi at Sistah Space is trying to change that.
Absolute pleasure to meet you. What was the catalyst for you starting this charity?
The vicious murder of Valerie Ford and her year-old daughter. Yeah. I mean, they'd done the right things. They'd gone to the police, they reported the threat, which was recorded as a threat to property.
As opposed to life.
Yeah.
There are real concerns that police officers and other agencies have significant knowledge gap when it comes to the black community and black victims of domestic abuse.
Valerie's law seeks to make cultural competency training mandatory across all mainstream services.
What does it involve exactly?
We talk about the fact that we may not bruise as easily, our bruises may not show up. We talk about the issues that we face when we go to report domestic abuse. A lot of victims don't recognise themselves. It's almost like they're so used to being, traditionally, culturally, back home,
Secondary.
Those kind of things that we have learned, we now have to unlearn. I'm not going to stop until we get equal rights and justice.
And Ngozi and Heather join us now. Thank you both for coming in. Ngozi, this is incredible. You know, when you first hear about a charity like this, you think, well, why would you need something like this? Domestic abuse is just domestic abuse and it applies to everybody. But just hearing you there, I mean, I've just learned a few things. You don't realise at face value, that some of the complex cultural issues that perhaps we do need to consider.
I mean, it's a question that I'm often asked, why do we need a special charity? I know that that's not asked, like, in the LGBT+, the Muslim, the Jewish communities, people with disabilities. People don't ask, why do you need your own specialist charity? It's very much the same for us. There is so much that people don't understand. And the only way that they're going to understand is if we teach, is if we share. And that's what Sistah Space is about.
Let's explain some of that cultural competence that you're trying to educate and inform others. What is that stuff?
For example, if you look at my hair, you'll see that my hair has locks. It's a very different texture and it's a different body than any other demographic, all right? To take care of our hair and our skin is very different than most people. Even that alone. If we use an example like the really sad murder of Sarah, if I asked what Sarah's last name is, everybody can tell you. But if I ask about Valerie and her daughter, nobody knows. What's the difference? One is white and one is black, all right? So it's a difficult and uncomfortable conversation, but it's one that must be had.
And you're calling for more training for police officers, aren't you? So that they can, recognise this, have more understanding about this, to be able to know the cultural differences and know how to deal with that.
So Valerie's law calls for training not only for the police, it's for every organisation, every individual, every charity that say they support women affected by domestic or sexual abuse. I mean, the police are one agency. The violence against women and girls, VOG sector, are another. They really don't understand that they don't understand. And Valerie's law seeks to educate so that there is no more excuse of we didn't know, we didn't understand. People must be held accountable. If you take the position that you are supporting victims of domestic abuse equally, then we need to see that reflected, and right now that's not happening.
It's a really good point.
Heather, when Ngozi puts that case forward, you listen and you think, well, my God, why haven't we had this before? We've had communities from, Africa and the Caribbean here for, more than just 60, 70 years, for a long, long time. It's taken this long. How do you feel about the fact that we're only now setting up organisations and charities to deal with such issues?
I think that it's an uncomfortable truth, as Ngozi said, and that people really didn't want to confront it. And not only people, but the women themselves, because it's... culturally, you were saying, you don't what happens at home stays at home, and people don't really talk about it. And as well, when people don't say anything to an abuser, you're enabling them. And sometimes within the community, it's horrible to say, but people will think, well, they're married and that's none of my business. But if somebody was to perpetrate that kind of violence on that woman outside of that relationship, everyone would have something to say. And I think to myself, you know, you can't have an abuser abuse their partner, their wife, their children, Monday to Saturday, and then go into church. And everybody knows that that happens, and nobody says anything. You know, I think people have to be held accountable. And also the fact that being black women, you are seen differently. The darker your skin, people think that the tougher that you are, and that you will sass your way out of domestic abuse. As you said to me, you know, a woman went into the police station and she said, and she was African-Caribbean, and she was being abused, and the policeman looked at her and said, I'm sure a strong Caribbean woman like you can handle herself. So you're defeminised as well. You know, there's lots of things that people bring when it comes to stereotypes that need to be and racial profiling.
So we're talking about intersectionality. So when you've got intersectionality of race and misogyny, then you know you have a massive problem. And we can't speak freely because apparently Britain is a place that's tolerant. Well, who wants to be tolerated? Tolerated is another expression of we'll put up with.
Exactly.
So I think we really need to start changing the language as well. Afro-Caribbean, BAME, this thing that puts kind of white people in one category and pretty much everybody else in another. And that in itself
people
is
get
discrimination.
tired of acronyms. You know, they can just say it. So they say BLM. And it means nothing. It doesn't resonate with them. Whereas if you say Black Lives Matter, whether you want to take it on board or not, saying those three words is very different from saying BLM.
And can I just say, Heather, you know, you've been to see the work that Ngozi's doing firsthand.
Amazing.
What do you make of her and the difference that she's making?
You know, she is such a vivacious, loving, kind woman. And, you know, there's family members that work in the organisation and there's people outside who feel like family. At the minute that I got there, I felt happy, I felt safe, and I thought it's a great place for women to come because there is a shop and, you know, women are given stuff and it's all free and it's all new. But the shop also serves a secondary purpose, and this is the thing about Ngozi. It's just, everything has to do more, has to work hard, just as she does. So you can come to the shop and you can say, you know, to somebody discreetly, I am a victim of domestic violence, and they will help you on the spot. So it's not just that you could go and you can just pick up clothes and stuff, because an abuser could drop you at the shop and not know that you're going to be able to ask for help.
On point.
So, you know, for me, that's what I took away, that there is this 360 holistic way of looking after abused women.
Incredible. And Ngozi, what you're doing is fantastic. And Heather, to lend your voice as well, just important.
Oh, no, it's an absolute pleasure.
It's great. We have to ask you why you're here, because we want to get outside. People, of course, you were in the news only a few weeks ago. It seems like such a long time ago now. But
it's a long time.
People moving on up was used
used
at the Tory party conference as Liz Truss came out to address the audience. What did you think at that time?
I thought that if she'd done some homework, my son's the Labour councillor, and I do not agree with all their policies, that they would have thought twice. And, you know, she's come a cropper, hasn't she?
She has come a cropper. She's... Well, the song lyrics, I think, were quite apt in a way, weren't they? It's a breakup song, isn't it?
It was like, move right out of here, baby, go pack your bags, and that's what happened. So, listen, thank you both very much, and Ngozi, congratulations to you on the great work.
Can I just say very quickly, we're now campaigning for a specialist refuge for Sistah Space, where African and Caribbean heritage women and girls can be safely looked after. So you're going to hear more about us, but thank you so much.
It's great. It's important what you're doing. Keep going.
We will have
Just
you back.
Keep going.
Thanks so much. Good to see you. Thanks, Heather.